Hi, this is Viraj again, and this time we're going to talk about improvements in null pointer exceptions from JDK 14 onwards. So as Java developers, we are thrilled about getting null pointer exceptions or any exceptions for that matter. Why? Because whenever there's an exception, we know that the problem is at a particular line number. So that gives us a clue, and from that point we can actually trace back and see what the problem is. Contrast that with the fact that there's a problem and then there's no exception. And you are like, where exactly is the problem, right? So if there is an exception or a null pointer exception, we actually like it. But there is a particular problem with null pointer exceptions where even though it pinpoints the line number, we don't know where exactly the problem. Let me illustrate this. I have two projects over here. One is Scratchpad, which is running on JDK 15. And then there's a Scratchpad JDK 8, which is running on JDK 8. I will create a class called Null Pointer Tester in JDK 8. All right, so that's a simple null pointer exception which doesn't really contain anything. And I'm going to add a main method here as usual. I'm going to add two array lists. Right, so we have two array lists. One is holding an object cache and the other one is holding metadata for that object cache. So at any point in time, we expect these two caches to have the same size. Let's go ahead, write the main. Now there's a whole bunch of code which is missing, which I'm not going to show. And now at this point, I want to test the two cache sizes to make sure that they are the same. If not, then there's a severe problem. Okay, I'm done. We have the code in place. What happens if you run it? Note that object cache and meta cache is null. Both are null. And so if you run it, obviously you expect a null pointer exception. Let's do that. We'll run it. Yeah, we're getting a null pointer exception. And the exact line number 14 is where the problem is. Well, however, note that you don't really know where the problem is. Is the problem that object cache is null or meta cache is null? So the exact problem is not known, even though the line number is known. So we are happy, but not entirely. We are not entirely happy because the runtime is not able to tell us where exactly the problem is. Now this was JDK 8. Now let me exactly run this program in JDK 15. I'm going to introduce a new class. Okay, so I created the exact same file. I'm going to close this one just so that people are not getting confused here. And now you see the one with JDK 15 version on the right side. This is the JDK 8 version. I'm going to close that one. So I'm going to run this now and let's see what the problem is. I'm going to run as Java application. The messages I'm getting is much more verbose, and you can see that it says exactly where the problem is. The null object cache is null. Now let's do this. Let's go ahead and write new array list cache. I'm going to add string here so it remove the warning. And if I run this, now obj cache is not null. You expect the problem to be at meta cache. And yes, it says meta cache is the problem. So this is really good because now with JDK 14, when a null pointer exception happens, we know exactly where the problem is. This will definitely help all the developers. Another area where this would be helpful is think about object chaining. So you have an object, a method in an object calling another object, which is calling another object, and then finally, there is a null pointer exception. You don't know in the chain where exactly the problem is. For example, x.y.z.m method is called. So you don't know whether x was null or y or z. So this particular exception will help to nail down exactly which object reference is null. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful.